Breaking. Massive changes to disability benefits are coming in 2026, and millions of people could lose hundreds of pounds every month. Personal independence payment rules are under threat, and Universal Credit's health element is being slashed for new claimants. These aren't small tweaks. They could completely change the financial reality for anyone with a disability or health condition. Stay with me because in this video I'm breaking down exactly who will be affected, how much money you could lose, and what you can do right now to protect yourself and your family. If you care about your benefits or know someone who relies on them, you cannot afford to skip this. Before we dive in, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. This channel is my personal space where I bring you the latest, most important updates that you won't hear anywhere else. I'll be uploading updates on this topic as soon as new developments happen, so subscribing now means you'll always be the first to know. Don't miss out. The Department for Work and Pensions has announced substantial changes to how disability benefits will work, and these changes represent some of the most significant reforms to the welfare system in recent years. Understanding what's happening is absolutely crucial if you or someone you know receives benefits like personal independence payment or universal credit with health components, because these changes could have a major impact on monthly income and financial stability. The government has put forward legislation that initially aimed to cut around £5 to £7 billion from the benefit system over the next few years. To put that into perspective, that's an enormous amount of money being taken out of support for people who are dealing with disabilities, chronic illnesses, and health conditions that affect their ability to work or manage daily activities. The changes primarily target two major benefits that millions of people across the country depend on for their basic needs and additional costs that come with having a disability or health condition. The first major change involves personal independence payment, which is a benefit designed to help people with the extra costs that come from having a long-term health condition or disability. Currently, personal independence payment has two components, the daily living component and the mobility component. The daily living part is meant to help with things like preparing meals, washing, dressing, and managing medication, while the mobility component helps with getting around. Under the current system, people are assessed and scored points based on how their condition affects their ability to do various activities. If you score 8 points or more in the daily living activities, you qualify for the standard rate, and if you score 12 points or more, you qualify for the enhanced rate. The government initially proposed changing the rules so that instead of just needing 8 points total from any combination of activities, claimants would need to score at least 4 points from a single activity or descriptor. This might sound like a small technical change, but it would have had enormous consequences. Many people who currently receive personal independence payment manage to reach the 8-point threshold by scoring 2 or 3 points across several different activities. Under the proposed new system, these individuals would no longer qualify, even though their disabilities and the associated costs haven't changed at all. Government impact assessments suggested this change alone could affect over 1 million people, potentially removing their entitlement to personal independence payment entirely. However, following massive pressure from disability rights campaigners, charities, and even members of parliament from the governing party itself, the government has backed down on some of these changes, at least temporarily. The proposed alterations to personal independence payment eligibility have been removed from the current legislation and put on hold pending a ministerial review. This represents a significant victory for disabled people and their advocates who campaigned tirelessly against these cuts, writing thousands of letters to members of parliament, organizing protests, and making their voices heard about how devastating these changes would be to their lives. Nevertheless, it's important to understand that this is a delay rather than a permanent reversal, and the review could still result in similar changes being implemented in the future. The second major change, which is still going ahead as planned, involves the health element of universal credit. Universal credit is a benefit that replaces several older benefits and provides support for people on low incomes, whether they're working or not. For people who have health conditions that limit their ability to work, there's an additional amount added to their universal credit called the Limited Capability for Work and Work-Related Activity element, often abbreviated as LCWRA. This extra amount currently stands at around £97 per week and is meant to recognize that people with serious health conditions face additional costs and have reduced earning potential. From April 2026, the government plans to cut this health element in half for new claimants, reducing it from approximately £97 per week to just £50 per week. This represents a reduction of £47 every single week, which adds up to nearly £200 per month or over £2,400 per year. For people already receiving this element before April 2026, their payments will be protected at the current rate, but that rate will be frozen, meaning it won't increase with inflation. For new claimants after April 2026, not only will they start at the much lower rate of £50 per week, but that lower rate will also be frozen until 2030, meaning its real value will gradually decrease as the cost of living continues to rise. At the same time, the government is increasing the standard allowance of universal credit by a small amount, around £7 per week by 2029. They argue this increase helps offset the cut to the health element, but when you do the mathematics, the numbers simply don't add up. A £7 increase doesn't come anywhere close to compensating for a £47 cut. The net effect is that new claimants with health conditions will be substantially worse off than people in identical circumstances who became ill or disabled just a few months earlier. This creates a two-tier system where people with the same disabilities and the same needs receive vastly different levels of support simply based on the timing of when their condition developed or when they made their claim. There's also a proposal being consulted on that would raise the minimum age for receiving the universal credit health element from 18 to 22. The government frames this as removing disincentives to work for young people and supporting their youth guarantee program, but critics point out that young people can develop serious, long-term health conditions just like anyone else, and denying them adequate support doesn't magically make them able to work. A young person with severe mental health problems, chronic pain, or other debilitating conditions needs support regardless of their age, and reducing their income could actually make their conditions worse and push them further from employment rather than closer to it. The government's justification for these cuts centers around the rising cost of disability benefits and what they call perverse incentives in the system. They argue that spending on health and disability benefits has been increasing rapidly, with projections showing it could rise by an additional £18 billion over the coming years. They also point to statistics showing that nearly 3 million people are currently out of work due to long-term sickness, and that 1 in 8 young people are not in education, employment, or training. Government ministers argue that the current system doesn't provide enough encouragement for people who can work to enter or return to employment, and they claim these reforms are necessary to make the system sustainable while still supporting those with the greatest needs. However, critics of these cuts, including disability rights organizations, anti-poverty charities, economists, and healthcare professionals, strongly dispute this narrative. They point out that the rise in disability benefit claims corresponds with several factors that have nothing to do with the generosity of benefits. NHS waiting lists have grown dramatically, leaving people waiting months or even years for diagnosis and treatment. Social care services have been cut to the bone, meaning people can't get the support they need to manage their conditions. The retirement age has been rising, forcing older workers with health problems to remain in the workforce longer. The COVID pandemic has left many people with long-term health effects. Mental health services have been chronically underfunded. These are the real reasons why more people are claiming disability benefits, not because the benefits are too generous or because people are choosing not to work. Furthermore, independent analysis suggests the government is significantly underestimating both the scale and the impact of these cuts. While official figures suggested around 250,000 people would be pushed into poverty by these changes, analysis from organizations like the New Economics Foundation indicates the true figure could be closer to 340,000 people, or even more when you account for all the interconnected effects. The government's own impact assessments, even with their conservative estimates, acknowledge that these cuts will push tens of thousands of people, including children, into poverty, yet they're proceeding anyway. One particularly concerning aspect of these reforms is how they'll affect people with mental health conditions and less visible disabilities. The assessment process for benefits already struggles to properly evaluate conditions like depression, anxiety, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, and fluctuating conditions where someone's ability varies from day to day. Making the criteria stricter will disproportionately impact these individuals, many of whom already face significant barriers to getting the support they need. The changes could also increase pressure on other services. When people lose disability benefits or receive substantially reduced payments, they often turn to local authorities for help, food banks for emergency support, and the NHS for healthcare they can no longer afford to manage privately. This means any savings from benefit cuts could be offset by increased costs elsewhere in the public sector, not to mention the human cost of increased hardship, worsening health conditions, and reduced quality of life. The reforms also raise serious questions about fairness and equality. Creating a system where two people with identical disabilities receive vastly different amounts of support based solely on when they became disabled seems fundamentally unjust. Someone who develops a serious health condition in March 2026 will receive £97 per week in Health Element, while someone with the exact same condition who develops it in April 2026 will receive only £50 per week. Both face the same additional costs, the same barriers to employment, and the same challenges in daily life, yet one receives less than half the support of the other. The consultation on raising the age for Universal Credit Health Element to 22 is particularly troubling. Young people between 18 and 22 can and do develop serious, long-term health conditions, including severe mental illness, chronic physical conditions, disabilities from accidents or illness, and degenerative conditions. Denying them adequate support during this critical period could have lasting consequences for their health, their ability to eventually return to work, and their overall life trajectory. Rather than helping young people into work, reducing their income when they're seriously ill could push them into crisis, homelessness, or situations where their health deteriorates further. What makes this situation especially challenging is the lack of comprehensive impact assessment before these policies were announced. Normally, major policy changes require detailed analysis of how they'll affect different groups of people, what the broader consequences might be, and whether the intended benefits actually outweigh the costs. In this case, the government has been criticized for pushing ahead with reforms without fully understanding or acknowledging their implications. Even though some impact assessments have been published, they've been criticized as incomplete and potentially underestimating the true effects. For people currently receiving benefits or who might need to claim in the future, understanding these changes is absolutely essential for financial planning. If you're currently receiving personal independence payment, the proposed changes to eligibility criteria have been delayed but not canceled, so it's important to stay informed about any future announcements. If you're receiving the health element of Universal Credit and you started claiming before April 2026, your payment will be protected at the current rate but frozen, meaning it won't increase with inflation. If you develop a health condition or need to claim the health element after April 2026, you'll receive the much lower rate of £50 per week instead of £97. The human cost of these changes cannot be overstated. We're talking about people who already face enormous challenges in their daily lives, people dealing with chronic pain, mental health struggles, mobility problems, degenerative conditions, and disabilities that make ordinary tasks extraordinarily difficult. These benefits aren't luxuries or extras. They help cover the genuine additional costs that come with disability. Things like higher heating bills because you're home more, or have conditions that make you sensitive to cold, special dietary requirements, transportation costs when you can't use public transport, equipment and aids, additional clothing costs, when conditions cause excessive wear or special needs, and countless other expenses that people without disabilities don't face. Cutting these benefits doesn't make disabilities disappear or magically enable people to work, it simply makes already difficult lives significantly harder. The situation continues to evolve, and it's crucial for anyone affected by these changes to stay informed, check their entitlements regularly, and seek advice if they're unsure about how the reforms might impact them. Organizations like Disability Rights UK, Citizens Advice, and various disability charities provide free information and support. The fight against these cuts is ongoing, and the success in delaying the personal independence payment changes shows that public pressure and advocacy can make a difference, even if the ultimate outcome remains uncertain. I'll be uploading updates on this topic as soon as new developments happen, so subscribing now means you'll always be the first to know and don't miss out.